right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
$7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Day 8 of the government shutdown. A headline coming from the Denver Post. Denver International Airport hit with flight delays due to shortage of air traffic controllers. Is this what will finally force the government back to the negotiating table? The idea that they can't go home.
I like that idea. Keep them there until they fix this.
Healthcare, illegal immigrants, wait, I can't get home?
Yeah, hang on here. Yeah, exactly.
Shorting stoppages among air traffic controllers have impacted flights out at DIA Monday evening amid the ongoing government shutdown. The Federal Aviation Administration reported that staffing shortages were creating delays at Denver, Burbank, California, Newark, and New Jersey. Bill, there's part of me that goes, well, clearly I want air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
That is something that is important. It keeps us safe. There's a lot of moving pieces around there. But then you also, if you know anyone who's a trained pilot, knows that these guys can figure it out oftentimes. That's happened at Burbank.
Yeah.
They took off and landed just fine because they know to switch over and talk to each other and that type of thing. So is it that critical? Is this what will finally get folks to the negotiating table? What do you expect the negotiations to look like? Who do you blame for all this? Join the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. And Trump saying he may not even do the back pay. Wild. We'll cover that and more. Now is time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Hey, good morning. It's hump day, 40 and partly cloudy. Good day to get out there and walk. In Denver, expecting a high of 77 today. This portion of the news is sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, the big liar, the big traitor, the big seashells by the seashore photographer James Comey, scheduled to be arraigned today. If you're flying to Nashville, Dallas, Chicago, or Newark from DIA this morning, there may be delays due to the Democrats' shutdown. It is day 8, and it may end today after lawmakers vote this morning. We shall see. An FBI corruption unit has been shut down after reportedly monitored communications between some Republican senators, as we know. FBI Director Kash Patel said Tuesday the unit was dismantled after a Fox News report claimed it had monitored about a dozen GOP senators. A senior Hamas official says they have exchanged hostage and prisoner lists with Israel during their negotiations to end the war in Gaza. A member of the terrorist group says that the lists contain names of prisoners and hostages who will be released if a deal is reached during the talks underway in Egypt. Texas National Guard troops have arrived south of Chicago. It's not yet clear when they will be deployed onto the streets of Chicago. The city and state have sued to block the administration's deployment, while DJT says he's willing to invoke the Insurrection Act to bypass legal challenges. FBI Director Kash Patel on the gangs in the Windy City.
Taking the juggernaut that is demolishing the weaponization of law enforcement and bringing it to places like Chicago. When I was there today with Todd, we learned that the Chicago city streets have 110,000 gang members. That's right, you heard me right. They had 1,200 shootings this year alone, 360 homicides. When politicians choose to side with those metrics and not their citizenry, thank God we have President Trump and this Department of Justice and this FBI going in there and crushing violent crime. And President Trump sent us into these cities quietly to set the stage, to set up for the National Guard, to see the success that we saw in Washington, D.C., in Memphis. The FBI has been leading the charge in every single one of these streets because we know how to gather ground-level intelligence and we know how to put handcuffs on the bad guys.
And in Portland, the good guys are up against the professional protesters, of course, the chaos creators.
The political ramifications of making a big decision to keep his city safe. That's my concern, is that you've got so many people here in Portland playing politics. They don't realize they're up against professional terrorists. Antifa-affiliated individuals are outside this building right now shouting death to my law enforcement officers while the mayor drives home and probably has a fancy dinner tonight and goes to sleep in his cushy bed.
That's Christy Nome. 4 weeks ago today, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and General Mike Flynn says we have to continue to ask questions, and Candace Owens is doing that.
3 people told me off record. 2 people who have this in a written communication from Charlie. One who is a Turning Point USA donor, and I would say very much one of the white knights in this. The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed. He told these people, I think they're going to kill me. Okay? He did not express that to me, so I am telling you this based off the testimony of 3 people. And I am saying this because I hope that these people, who I think are good, will be inspired to come forward with that.
And then there's AOC backpedaling. She said that Stephen Miller was short, body shamed him.
I want to express my love for the short king community. Laugh at them. Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10", and
he's 5'10".
Looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10". I don't believe in body shaming. I am talking about how big or small someone is on the inside. Like, for example, I have no idea how tall Andrew Tate is. No idea at all. But that guy looks to me like 5'3", like 5'3", 5'4". Whereas physically, men of smaller stature can come across. They are spiritually 6 foot. If you're a good dad, if you stand with women, if you're not belittling immigrants, you're like, 6'3".
Good
What?
try.
What? Yeah, they cannot
She's so
throw
smart.
shade well at all. They can't roast it.
They can't.
And they have to qualify it because they all live like they're walking on broken glass all the time. It's like,
Yes.
I don't want to shame those short kings. I love you guys, but Stephen Miller, he's small. Small.
Right, but I'm not body shaming.
I don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
He's small.
Painted herself into a corner.
Yeah, no, they're not
yeah.
funny. This is why I don't think you can be a progressive, really, and be a comedian. Because you're just so afraid all the time.
So true. So true.
Offending people.
Yep. Then you turn into Jimmy Kimmel and you're not funny. All right, the Avs at the Kings. They start the new season last night.
Knocked down. McKinnon wide. McCarr fakes it. Walks in. McCarr saved by Kemper. Score!
Big goal there to make it 3-0, and the Avs win it 4-1 in L.A. American League playoffs, the Mariners beat the Tigers 8-4, and the Yankees avoided elimination, edging the Blue Jays 9-6. 38 in Superior, 39 in Highlands Ranch, 40 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast. Going to be another mostly sunny day in the Denver metro. Temperatures warming to the middle and upper 70s. Clear tonight and mild mid-50s. Going to hit the low 80s tomorrow as we see daytime sunshine. By Thursday night, a few more clouds will move in. Lows are going to be in the mid-50s. Friday and Saturday, highs in the mid-70s. Friday night into the weekend could see a few light showers. 60 Sunday. Weather brought to you by L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, dependable service, call 720-851-1691 or visit them online at besteverhvac.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Seven days, 9 hours, 10 minutes, 55, 56, 57 seconds. The White House has a government shutdown clock, and it continues to tick along. Suzanne texted in saying, I hope they continue to play tough, and the government never opens. What? Suzanne? But the government's how people get their health care and paychecks and all that. And Suzanne's no rock-ribbed conservative. She tends to side with Bill a little bit. Jason in Denver texting in, getting rid of air traffic controllers is like getting rid of traffic lights. It's not a good idea. Yeah, could traffic function without a stoplight and signs if drivers communicated to each other? Sure, but it's not efficient and will lead to many more accidents. And in fact, The Hill reporting that there are flight delays happening all over America. Bill, I think the flight delays... That's where I could see people really getting frustrated, going, okay, guys, you got to figure this thing out, right? Everything else is, debatable and policy-oriented and, is this health care going to be covered? Is illegal health care going to be covered? Is this paycheck and back pay and all that stuff going to be covered? Look, that's all policy-oriented and debatable. But now you're starting to mess with grandma coming out, and now you're starting to mess with my ability to get the deal done and all that. Now the pressure is really going to start to push. That's my read on this. What do you think?
The thing that I think will be a big change in this, I think the air traffic controllers are kind of the first group that are just going to be like, hey, we're not showing up because you're not giving us the paycheck. And as another note that we'll bring in here in a second is whether or not they will actually get that back pay, I think is also going to be a motivator as to whether or not they stay home or come in. I think a big one that would change would be if the TSA screeners stopped showing up. Because now it's not that we can't get your planes up in the air and then land them in an efficient time. Now you're stuck in a long, endless line at the airport. One thing that we know for certain about Americans is we really seriously dislike public uncomfortableness and inconvenience. If we have to stand in a long line, that's why Disney hides those lines from you. Because if we were okay standing in just a long line every time, they wouldn't hide them in the buildings. They wouldn't put stuff around you to watch to distract you that you're going to wait 45 minutes until you get on this ride the last 3 minutes. So that's the reason, is if the TSA people stop showing up and all of a sudden now it takes you an hour and a half to 3 hours just to get through screening. And not just because of air traffic controllers, but because of the screening process, you start missing planes. Yeah, then there's going to be some people very, very, very angry and upset. But luckily enough, most of our representatives don't necessarily always have to deal with that. So, yeah, they get their own line. They have the pre-check. They don't have to stand in line with the unwashed.
Oh,
yeah,
if
so
you're
stuff
Tulsi
like that.
Gabbard,
Yeah.
you get extra scrutiny.
Yeah, you do.
Jay from Louisville texting in, health insurance premiums are set to skyrocket, but maybe it's the plane travel and lack thereof that will convince them. Yeah, but Jay, I'm trying to talk about what's going to get these guys back to the table.
Yeah.
If you think that this debate over Obamacare subsidies is what's going to finally force these guys to the table, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
would agree
seeing
with you
it
on that.
because we're 7 days into it.
And the reason I would agree with you on that, Jeff, is because that was the reason at the beginning.
Right.
So this was the intent of the bill. This to me is unlike other things and other government stoppages when the Republicans are there. The Republicans are asking for cuts and cutting back of programs. This is, and again, they ask for some cuts and they want to reverse some spending. This is to place spending back in. And so it's a little bit of a different conversation, and because it was the intent of the bill. And so coming after that, normally Republicans pick some other programs, things like that, but because Trump passed this omnibus bill, you can point to this piece of legislation. A lot of times, Republicans come with cuts in other programs, et cetera, because there's not legislation that necessarily is in the balance at that point. So, yeah, while it is about health care, it's going to be personal pain, and flights are going to be one of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, President Trump yesterday saying, well, maybe we won't do some back pay for federal workers during the government shutdown, reversing what had been a long-standing policy for some 750,000 furloughed employees, according to a memo now circulating by the White House. Trump signed into law after the longest government shutdown in 2019 legislation that ensures federal workers receive back pay during any federal funding lapse. But in the new memo, the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, says back pay must be provided by Congress if it chooses to do so as part of any bill to fund the government. The move by the Republican administration is widely seen as a strong-arm tactic, a way to pressure lawmakers to reopen the government now in its 7th-plus day of shutdown. There are some people that don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way, Trump said during an event at the White House. He said back pay, quote, depends on who we're talking about, unquote. Refusing retroactive pay to workers, some of whom must remain on the job as essential employees, would be a stark departure from norms and practices, and almost certainly would be met with legal action, while federal workers, as well as service members of the military, have often missed paychecks. During past shutdowns, they're almost always reimbursed once the government reopens. That should turn up the urgency and the necessity of the Democrats doing the right thing here, House Speaker Mike Johnson said at a press conference at the Capitol. Johnson, a lawyer, said he hadn't fully read the memo, but there are some legal analysts who are saying that it may not be necessary or appropriate to repay the federal workers. But Democrat Senator Pat Murray of Washington blasted the Trump administration as defying the law, another baseless attempt to try and scare and intimidate workers by an administration run by crooks and cowards, said Murray, who is the ranking member on the Senate Appropriations Committee. The letter of the law is as plain as can be. Federal workers, including furloughed workers, are entitled to their back pay following a shutdown. Asked a second time about back pay for furloughed federal workers, given that the requirement is spelled out in law, Trump said, I follow the law, and what the law says is correct. In a single-page memo from Trump's Office of Management and Budget under Russ Vought, first reported by Axios, the office general counsel seeks to lay out a legal rationale for no back pay of federal workers. The memo explains that while the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019 says workers shall be paid after federal funding is restored, it argues the action is not self-executing. Instead, the memo says repaying the federal workers should have to be part of legislation to reopen the government. The OMB analysis draws on language familiar to budget experts by suggesting that the 2019 bill created an authorization to pay the federal workers, but not the actual appropriation. Congress, it says, is able to decide whether it wants to pay the workers or not. For now, Congress remains at a standstill, with neither side nor the White House appearing willing to budge. Democrats are fighting for health care funds to prevent a lapse in federal subsidies that threaten to send insurance rates skyrocketing. Republicans say the issue can be dealt with later. So what's your take on Trump's little, hey, nice paycheck you got there? Maybe it's the government that's shut down, Congress, that needs to make sure that that's fulfilled, not me.
Again, this proves what I was saying last week, I feel, that Trump is trying to hold government workers hostage. That he's making this into a hostage negotiation system. And, that's a pox on him. That's ridiculous. And for me, out of bounds, that he's trying to hold government employees and their jobs hostage based on something that is way above their purview and their ability to control. That's ridiculous. And I'm wondering if the OMB with Russ Vogt and Donald Trump had talked at all before they went out and did this, because Vogt says, well, Congress has got to do it. And then Donald Trump says, we'll pay some, but we're not going to pay others. Hang on. But the president can't decide that. I thought Vogt just said it was Congress was going to decide that. And it's weird how all of a sudden we're talking about the fact that Congress is in charge of the appropriations, given the fact that we've decided the executive can cut appropriations that have been allocated by Congress. We have universally, in this administration, decided the executive can determine appropriations. Yet now,
except in this case.
Yeah, now we have no idea. Our hands are tied. Yeah, okay, sure. That's the thing that is so shocking, is this goes against the majority of how they have been governing for the first 8 months or so of the year. And that's, I guess 10 months now. God, it's 10 months in. Shoot. Yeah, so that's the idea. It's been that long. They've been going at it this way, and now they're like, well, Congress has got to do something. Hang on. Haven't been waiting for that the entire time. We didn't do anything else based on Congress appropriations. Didn't even wait for Congress to take apart the Department of Education before we decided to sunset that thing. That's supposed to be an act of Congress. That wasn't okay. And now we're like, no, we can't do anything unless Congress decides to spend the money. Excuse me, I think that's not how you have been governing. That's not been how you've been deploying the pen of the executive. So this, again, is nothing more than a hostage negotiation with the Republicans at this point. They want to hold government workers hostage. And I'm not certain that's going to play out as an electoral victory, because anybody that has someone that is in their family or their social circle that has a government job, regardless of politics, do you think it's going to play well when the party, even the one you support, is holding your friend, your family member's job hostage, even though they might not even support what's going on? They don't have any vote in it, but yet their job is on the line because of the parties playing politics. This is silly. This is really silly.
What do you think about Congress not getting back pay? Are they still getting paid? I don't know in this case.
Oh, of course.
If members of Congress, they're not furloughed with their pay?
No, of course not.
I think some have said that they're willing to do that, and they're not accepting their paychecks.
Yeah, sure. But again,
but it's not mandatory.
No, not in the least. But again,
that's something that I think you would get 99% of the American people to support.
The American
if you're
people
going to shut down the government and you guys can't negotiate this, I think you could get most Americans to agree to no paycheck if the budget isn't balanced.
But here's the problem is you can get zero of the congressional members to agree on that. Yeah. How many votes do you think you would get? We should not get back pay if the government is shut down. You would get 0 votes on that one, just like the idea that, again, we've talked about it before, that the quickest way to fix the Affordable Care Act is to force all Congress members to take, and their staffs, to take health care through the Affordable Care Act. Remember, this is also the Congress that has taken apart, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a soapbox thing here, that has taken apart the rules that help protect things like pensions and retirement plans. Yet they have one of the best pension and retirement plans ever. I still someday, Jeff, when we have more time, I would love to have a longer, deeper conversation as to why members of Congress get a pension in the first place. I'm super curious about why that is something that is protected. I see absolutely no reason for any of them to ever draw a pension
from the American taxpayer
after they have gone home and they're no longer serving.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So that's the idea. Of course, they're going to pay themselves. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they passed a law right now saying during government shutdown, we should get a bonus. I bet that would pass like 100%. Yeah, and I'm being facetious, but that's the idea. That's how little they care about this functionally, because it doesn't harm them. That you may be right. The idea that now when air travel for themselves gets painful, now maybe they'll think about this. Now maybe there's going to be an issue, but until then, it doesn't matter.
Look, if premiums are going to skyrocket without this government subsidies, which, by the way, can we just talk for a second about being in a position where the government has to subsidize our health care to the point where if it doesn't, everybody's got to pay through the roof? Okay? We've done this now with education. We're doing it now with health care. The government comes in, subsidizes the crud out of this stuff. All the cost gets artificially inflated, and then we run around for the rest of our lives terrified that if the government somehow doesn't continue to subsidize it, well, then we're all going to have to pay a fortune. But if that's the argument from the Democrats, okay, why not just open the government and then have that argument later? Because that train's still coming down the track.
But the problem is, and this is what we go back to, and this is the exact conversation I had with someone that's in elected office in Colorado about the previous government shutdowns. And it was, why is this okay for Republicans when the Democrats are controlling Congress to shut down the government over the funding bills? And the answer was leverage. If the Democrats reopen the government, they lose leverage. So they can't go back and discuss it.
Are you sure they do? I understand they lose leverage with this particular battle. But if what the Democrats are saying is correct, that we're going to end up with these skyrocketing premiums that are going to hit everybody because we're not subsidizing it the way we used to, that train's still coming down the track. You're still going to be able to make that argument. We can still explore that very same policy issue, and we're not tying the air traffic controllers to it.
But why would the Republicans ever come to the table to talk about it? Because they just enacted the big, beautiful bill, which did exactly that. So why in the world would they come back to the table to reverse something that their bill just did?
Well, I guess it's not that big of a deal then, right?
Well,
I mean, the premiums must not be skyrocketing that much.
Well, here's the idea is, or it's the intended consequence. That the bill intended to do this. And the reason is, I don't think that the Republicans intended healthcare premiums to skyrocket like this, but what they intended was to balance out their budget bill. They needed these cuts in order to make room for their continuation of Donald Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's what this needed. That's why these had to happen. They had to do these to offset some of those tax cuts. So that's the issue. That's part of what's happening here. So there's no way they're going to go back on that, and there's no way they're going to go back on the legislation they just passed. And here's an example that'll lead us into a little bit of next hour, Jeff. Imagine this. Imagine we came to the Democrats and asked them to undo the transgender therapy bill. You had a great argument about how this, earlier in the show, about how this is going to be unconstitutional. You were down there testifying about it, and you knew these were landmines that were laid into how the legislation was written and how it was passed. And the Democrats had no interest in coming back to the table and renegotiating the bill they already passed. They don't want to change it.
Yeah, but to me, it just makes the argument that maybe the premium skyrocket isn't going to be as bad as they're all saying, because if it was, the Republicans are going to be forced to deal. I mean, could you imagine all these folks' healthcare premiums skyrocketing? Of course, you're going to have to deal with it because there's an electoral consequence to it.
Yeah.
But if it's not that bad, now you have to use the shutdown as leverage in order to try to get it passed. I don't know. Who do you blame in the midst of all this? We're now approaching day 8, little White House countdown, 7 days, 9 hours, 28 minutes, and 56, 57, 58 seconds. Air traffic controllers heading out. They actually have a whole website where you can click on Colorado and, for instance, look at the impact that this shutdown is having. So both sides saying, hey, the shutdown's not great, but it's those guys over there that are causing it. Whom do you blame? Who do you think should make the changes? Would love to hear from you. 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line at 720-819-5115. Let's talk advanced hair restoration. Guys, if you're losing your hair, you need a simple solution that works. You want the best. Modern technology, top-rated physicians, something that's guaranteed to work. Guys, you need Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration, from the experience itself to their unmatched results. You got receding hairline, bald spot, or thinning hair. Address them all with Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment in a calm, relaxed environment with the most experienced professionals. Advanced Hair has performed tens of thousands of these breakthrough treatments, and get this, your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day. No one in Denver can offer anything like the Advanced FUE found at Advanced Hair, and I highly recommend their team. It starts with your free consultation. Call 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Refine your hairline with the team that's redefined hair restoration. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. Advancedhair.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. The government shut down. Day 8. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. The Hill reporting flight delays have spread to major airports across the United States. Flight delays at major airports across the country occurred yesterday, expected to continue today. The FAA reported shortages at airports in Nashville, Boston, Dallas, Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth. My goodness, Reagan, Philadelphia, Fort Lauderdale, San Francisco, Newark, Boston. We saw it here at DIA. Do we refer to it as DIA or DEN? DIA.
DIA.
And as well as Burbank, you maybe saw those videos. Planes still taking off, just nobody there. Not delays, but nobody in the air traffic controllers. We've asked for your text messages, and they're hot on this one. 7143. Zero compassion for air traffic controllers. I have family members who work for them. They're making a serious six-figure salary. They know they have money just in case something like this shutdown happens, or save money. They have to save money just in case something like this happens. It's our shoulders. Oh, my gosh. It's our soldiers and sailors that are suffering the most in this. Jason in Denver texting in, as a small business owner who pays my entire premium out of pocket, I do appreciate the subsidy. I know, Jason, but the problem I have with these subsidies is it's artificially inflating everything. So this becomes like a roller coaster up, a train up that we're never going to be able to get off. It's like education. It just constantly gets more expensive.
Well, the only pushback on that I would have is within reason, some of the rest of the world disagrees. And all I'm saying is when we look at a global chart of healthcare spending, the U.S. is an extreme outlier in spend. So the idea that there is no solution to this is not borne out when we look at healthcare systems around the rest of the world. They seem to have managed ways to pay far less. Now,
and do you know how they do that?
Again,
they tax the crud out of their people.
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. There are some other systems and things that do that. However, but the issue being that there's nothing to stop this runaway overinflation of what we spend on healthcare. So far, the rest of the world seems to have managed it. We can argue about whether and debate whether or not those things are something America would be willing to do, but the idea that it can't be done is not borne out by the facts around the rest of the world.
I disagree entirely, Mr. Thorpe.
Yeah, why?
Because the way that it works in other countries is you have price fixing that takes place because the government is the one that actually is the only provider. You don't have competition that takes place. So the government can come in and just say, this is how much it's going to cost. By the way, in order to make this happen, we got to tax the crud out of our people to do this. But you have no free market. And we know this over and over and over again in everything. That when you allow free market forces to compete against each other with price transparency, that's where I think the big problem in our country exists. With price transparency, you actually get lower costs.
The only problem with that is that we'd have to then figure out why we're doing Trump RX, because that would fall into your price fixing. That would be the government setting the control on the prices of drugs. And so that would directly go against the argument you just made about the free market, and that's something that is being pushed by the Trump administration. But outside of that, there are countries that have better control over their healthcare costs that also offer private insurance. Germany is an example. Germany, you are given 6 months once you come into the country to buy a private insurance plan. There are some requirements upon that private insurance plan as far as what you're going to do, and if you don't, then there's a fine and a fee that you have to pay beyond that. And that's what they do. So there is some competition inside of there based on the insurance plan. Is the insurance plan governed by the government? Yes, absolutely. But there is some competition there that they do have. There are systems, and that's the idea is that what I push back on is the idea that we somehow have figured out the bestest, most wonderfulest way, and we can't learn from other countries. And based on our spend, I think we're wrong about it. But that's personal.
As you can see, Billy and I disagree on that. We're not going to solve the healthcare problem today. But 4122 texting in, this is an anonymous federal employee. So Interesting. Listen to this one. Good morning, fellas. I'm all for our congressmen and senators going without pay. As an essential government employee working at the local federal prison, I'm required to go to work. Some of my coworkers are even required to work mandatory overtime multiple times a week. We're short-staffed and just recently had a homicide. Good night. Wow. That's wild.
Yeah, and the idea is, the problem I've got on that, and then especially those the workers that are on the lower end. Again, the one person was talking about, those air traffic controllers, they make a lot of money. They should be able to just take time off, and they shouldn't get the money back. These are federal workers in this end that probably don't have the ability to save that kind of money. And again, if someone that is a guard at a federal institution or prison, how many paychecks, just the audience, how many paychecks do you think they could stand to lose? And that's the issue here, is that once you get into the rank and file losing their paychecks, the question you should be asking yourself is, how many paychecks could I afford to lose? And before we say, hey, they got these big fat government contracts and government checks, they make these government money. Wait. The argument always has been, you work for the government because you get better benefits, not a better salary. The better salaries, the higher paycheck is found in the private world. That's where those exist. The trade-off is the safety, security, and benefits you derive from the government. So again, remember that. Keep that in mind when we're talking about these fat government workers should just be able to get a free vacation.
Mary from Wyoming texting in, my experience as a former federal employee is the federal government has been dominated by the socialists. As I said, when I came out as a Republican, I got ostracized. I believe other Republicans are on the down low and ID as independents to avoid this problem. Trump knows federal employees do not support him. That's federal employees and their families do not support him. And given the media, those headlines I've been sending you on a daily basis saying he's incompetent, they're never going to support him. So do you think that's part of the equation? I think that's definitely part of the equation in all this, that Trump is like, nah, this is not a group of people that are highly supportive of my agenda, what we're trying to achieve. We've had to climb over, mountains in order to try to terminate some of these jobs. They're overwhelmingly progressive and Democrat in their donations and voting. So, I'm not rushing back to get them paid again.
That's interesting. And it would be great if he was elected president of the Republicans. However, he was elected president of the United States of America. And last time I checked, that covers all the citizens. And hearing from the executive that, well, if you're not my supporter, then it's okay if I can cut your pay, cut your salary, cut your job, hurt you, your family, where you live, because you didn't support me. Really? If that is the way that we are going to go forward, okay, what do you think is going to happen if you get Democrats in charge? Or let's say that, as always, we heard all these super socialists, the Democrats. What happens then? Will you be screaming and yelling when that socialist Democrat president cuts off the funding for your states and your people?
It has to be a two-way street. And we're talking about people that have oftentimes tried to interrupt his agenda. They're deep state progressives that exist within the federal government, that anytime a Republican gets in there, they throw everything they can, every wrench they possibly can to try to stop the agenda. And so if you're going to go, well, he's a leader for everybody. Yeah, well, then the federal employees also need to take their marching orders from the President of the United States because he's duly elected, and they can't be so political as well.
Just a moment ago, you read an anonymous text from a federal employee that works at a prison. They're part of the deep state? That's part of it? The deep state's there? The deep state are the air traffic controllers? The TSA workers? Really?
What did Washington D.C. go during the last election?
That's the deep state.
Do you remember? Do you remember what the percentage was for Kamala Harris in D.C.?
Here's the thing, though. We're talking about a federal worker in Colorado. You talking about what percentage of people? Hang on a sec. But hang on.
You can use an example in Colorado.
Yeah.
I can use an example in D.C.
Yeah. Again, voters. Yeah, and then once they're in, they're in a job in the federal government and they have no affect necessarily on policy or anything else. This is the weird part, is that we have assumed that because someone donates or has a political view, they can't do their job without that political view impacting what they're doing. We have seen a few examples of that, but we've seen it on both sides. And before we talk about Democrats coming in and gumming up all the works, I'll go right back to Mitch McConnell under Barack Obama saying the Republicans are now the party of no. There wasn't a single thing they were ever going to let Obama do. And we can go back to the previous administration under Biden.
Those are elected officials. We're talking about federal employees.
Hang on a sec. But then we can also talk about, Comey. We can talk about Jim Jordan. We can talk about everything else that goes on inside. And so what you're going to have to show me is that there was these active nature to go ahead and undermine what was going on. Remember, John Durham went and looked at the deep state and found nothing.
Bill.
Found nothing.
Absolutely they exist. You hear it over. Comey's a perfect example of this, of how politicized the FBI became under his leadership. But the point being, when you're analyzing the equation of what's happening with this government shutdown, having a federal bureaucracy that tends to be overwhelmingly Democrat versus a Republican president, yes, that's going to play into the negotiations that take place here and how people feel towards one another. All right, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. I've got a great place where you can go eat that's affordable, especially if you're facing these furloughs. The Black Eyed Pea of Colorado, locally owned and operated by Steve and Michelle. I love this restaurant. My whole family does. It's maha. It's healthy. It's locally sourced. It's delicious. It's affordable. Don't go spend money with fast food. Go to the Black Eyed Pea of Colorado. And they've got a special potato menu going on right now. If you go to blackeyedpeaofcolorado.com, you can see some of their featured menus there. Stuffed spuds are the feature this month on their fall menu. Who doesn't love a good baked potato? Check out their sweet pork spud, a sweet potato topped with pulled pork, drizzled with barbecue sauce, cheddar, and Monterey Jack cheese and green onions. They have a chopped steak spud, a south of the border spud, a cheeseburger spud, a pot roast stuffed spud, and more. See their menu at blackeyedpeacolorado.com for your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding reception, or company event. Make it a success with Black Eyed Pea Catering. And Black Eyed Pea gift cards are always perfect for your spouse, birthday favors, holiday presents, or your thank you to someone special. Get them a gift card. I love this restaurant. I know you will too. Keep it in Colorado and visit the Black Eyed Pea near you. All right, phone lines are hot. We're going to get to them next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. My goodness, what's happening with the government shutdown as it now gets into day 8? Trump administration threatening no back pay for federal workers. Air traffic controllers heading out. Flights delayed. Let's go to the phone lines. Barney, Denver. Good morning, Barney. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hey, Jeff and Bill. First off, it's kind of cool to learn a little bit about your news guy there, Blake. We know he's not a sucky, right? We're pretty sure of that now. I just, because you guys have been talking, so he played football in high school or college. I don't know. I think Blake's probably a pretty cool guy. He might even be cooler than both of you guys. But 100%. That's not what I called.
100%.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Clip that audio, Blake.
Yes.
And we know Blake would rip your head off. I just have a feeling about Blake. Like, he might just hit you unprovoked. But, okay, you had the caller say something about healthcare subsidies. So why is it when you walk in for an MRI, from my past experience, out of pocket is $900, but if it's insurance, it's $3,400? There's your problem with healthcare. All this crap. Doctors are in on it, and who the hell is the 21-year-old at the insurance company to tell the neurosurgeon that, no, you're not going to do a CT scan on this guy? This is just, look, that's not what I called, but I'm just saying, all this crap. And then you've got, what I really want to hear from you guys is, we know Republicans always try to shove crap into the, spending crap, pork, whatever, but this one was pretty cut and dry. It's a clean CR. You guys have already voted on the money that you want to spend. It's already a done deal. And then here comes Chucky, and I don't even care what you want to label it as. I don't care if there's one extra dime of spending for anything. In my opinion, the Democrats are at fault for this. But before I say that, the guy was talking about, somebody texted about air traffic controllers. I knew a couple of guys that did that. You go ahead and do that job, buddy. And if you think they're overpaid, I got news for you. Those guys work crappy hours, constantly changing shifts, very high stress. And who am I to judge Billy? Oh, Billy can do without his paycheck. He doesn't have to buy Coronas every night, whatever. It's not up to me to decide whether you deserve your paycheck or you can do without it. I think all of us pretty much are screwed if we lose a paycheck, if not two.
Yeah,
You've always got that one guy that's going to be a millionaire. But most of us, how do you know who I'm taking care of my grandmother, maybe. My daughter, you have no idea what somebody's really taken care of. So don't judge a guy. So what? 150, 180,000, it's really nothing in the grand scheme of things. But
Billy, or Barney, you're great.
You're a great Barney. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Have a great day, Barney.
We'll continue. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
710.